is the Wannabe Saints podcast, where we take virtues and try to break them down so they become tangible and applicable to your life.
We aren't here to bring you advice, we're here to bring you virtue. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Rachel.
We're your hosts, and this is Wannabe Saints.
All right.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Wannabe Saints. Today we have special guest Katie Baynai on. This is her second time on. She was on with our Ireland pilgrimage episode. So she's going to share with us her story of her conversion and crazy life.
Who said it was crazy?
About how she's become the amazing person that she is today. So
Work in progress.
Yeah, so before I say a little blib, just for those who we have new people, if they haven't listened to your other one yet, just a little bit of background info about yourself.
Yeah. So I am Rachel's older sister, actually.
We are told that we have the same voice,
Yes.
so
That might be difficult to discern on the podcast. I don't know.
yeah. Well, it's one of our interview episodes, so this whole time it should pretty much be Katie talking.
We'll see. Yeah, I'm Rachel's older sister. I am married to wonderful husband, Steve. We've been married for going on almost 16 years. We have 6 children. My life, I've dabbled in a number of things over the years, but currently I help run a classical school that my husband and I were co-founders of, and we just finished our 3rd school year. I teach math over at that school, and I'm the executive director, so I'm in charge of all the fundraising efforts. And then in addition to being a mom and the school and all that, I also have a pilgrimage business, which is why we did the podcast together in Ireland. I lead group pilgrimages. They focus internationally, taking people to sacred Catholic destinations.
She actually just got to take her whole family there for the first time. And they got back like a week ago.
Yes, this is true. And it's the first time we've ever taken all of our kids on a pilgrimage. And it was just ourselves, not with a larger group. And I've always wanted to do that, though. So we went to Italy, which totally has my heart. And it was just a really special family time. That was totally a treasure. And our kids range in age from 14 to 6 months. So, they won't all remember all the things, but regardless, I hope that there's grace in it for them. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even for your 6-month-old, fun fact, she got blessed by Pope Leo. So there's definitely grace even for the little 6-month-old.
Yeah, that was definitely a highlight for sure. That she was
cool.
Yes, she was picked by one of this security agents from Steve's hands, and he took her over to Pope Leo, and he gave her a little blessing, and we have that photographed for forever. So even if she doesn't remember it, she's got it as a memento for life. So
yeah, she's a celebrity out here because she was on the front page of our church's bulletin in our diocese, which is the biggest parish in the diocese. So
yes.
She's a celebrity.
Yeah, and I just found out today she's also in the diocesan newspaper.
Oh, no way.
Oh,
that's amazing.
Cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, before we keep going, I have a little switch up on you that I didn't tell you about.
Okay.
We're still doing an interview episode.
Okay.
But for like 2 weeks, I've been trying to prep for this episode, and I know your story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, faith is the virtue that I feel like fits it. But then I keep thinking about it. And this is the thing that keeps me up at night when I'm laying in bed. I'm like, it's not it. It's not it. This isn't the only virtue. And so at adoration, actually last night, because I've been trying to figure this out for 2 weeks. And of course, God loves the last minute. It's like, it's all 3 theological virtues. Your story. And I just want to quickly brush over that so we can show people through your story how these virtues are infused within us, even when we don't see it, or even when we're not recognizing that in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, theological virtue, in baptism, you are gifted faith, hope, and charity. And I like to explain it as a seed. you get this seed within you, and then on your confirmation, it's like that seed is watered and it blossoms, right? And so now they grow in you with even more. You're the faith, hope, and charity. But you've already had these. And as you've gone through life, and the story that I know of your conversion, as a teenager, you were rebellious, and we'll get into all the details, but you always kept running back. And it was what was making you run back. It wasn't just obedience to mom and dad, because you started to choose it for yourself. And that, I would say, is the hope. The hope was the anchor in your heart of this longing for more, this longing for true happiness, this longing for joy, this longing for satisfaction, this longing for healing, right? That's what hope is. Hope is truly a desire that's within us that we're longing for. Ultimately, what it is eternal life. And if you really want to deep dive in hope, we have an episode on that. But the gist of it was that was your anchor. You were hoping and longing for something. And so you kept running back to confession, and you never really missed mass because you knew, you were like, there's something here. And it just kept you coming back. But you weren't choosing. And the reason I say that it's not faith just overall is because you weren't choosing faith as an action of living it out. It wasn't like things happened to you and you were like, I'm trusting in God and I'm believing in God anyway right now. Like you turned to vice, you turned to sin, but you knew deep down in your heart that you longed for more. And it was that hope that kept you coming back.
Yeah. I guess I haven't reflected on that, but
yeah. So in when I was just reflecting on this, I was like, okay, I think it'd be really cool for people to get to hear as your story progresses that, okay, yeah, there's the hope that's within you. And then moving into faith, once you had like radical moments in conversion, then faith became action and you chose it for yourself. And then by faith, you are now who you are and like what you've done. And it's gone into charity, because charity is the action. And so so I'll point them out as we keep going, but that's just kind of the basis that I wanted to give people of that this interview episode actually isn't one virtue. It's all 3 theological virtues, which I think is really cool to get to see big picture in someone's life.
Cool.
Yeah. So anyways, good?
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's great.
Awesome. Then we'll just dive into your story. So Katie, take us back to the beginning. What was your faith like growing up?
Yeah. And I was actually thinking about what my faith was growing up when you were talking about faith and hope and mentioning like running back to confession. What would make me run back to confession? And what I think of is, as a little girl, I never doubted the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. That has been a lifelong belief for me, and that for sure has been probably my anchor, right, through life, is truly believing and knowing that Jesus is present in the Eucharist. And that's what kept me going to Mass always, right? And that's also what kept me going to confession, probably as well as like a fear of hell. But as a little girl, I know, there's that little thing. But as a little girl, I don't know, I think mom and dad did a really great job of modeling just faith. They were so, their example for us as kids was one of dedication to the Lord. They were dedicated in prayer, dedicated in frequenting the sacraments and teaching us the faith too. When it came to being catechized, we went to Catholic school growing up, but I felt that we were well catechized. We knew things our peers didn't know because mom and dad spoke about faith at home. And so as a little girl, I just loved the Lord. And I pictured myself that maybe I'd be a nun. And I actually remember saying that in 2nd grade. I think I'm going to grow up and be a nun, and, just loving the faith and loving to read about the saints and things like that. And also I even think back to my confirmation and just really like desiring in my heart for that to be an outpouring of the Holy Spirit upon me that day, really like wanting my heart to be open to receive whatever God was going to pour forth at that time. And honestly, I was hoping to feel something warm and tingly or something, whatever. And I didn't, but I just felt an openness, a desire, whatever, a hunger and a love for God. And really things started to shift in high school. We moved a lot growing up, and at that high school time, I went to 3 high schools, and that's a really interesting time of life to be the new kid, right? That is a challenging time of life to be the new kid, especially when people have been together a really long time and have long-term friendships, and you're showing up as the new girl. And let's be honest, girls are not always warm, fuzzy, and welcoming, And so there was a lot of fear wrapped around being the new girl because we'd already experienced that in elementary school. And so I didn't always handle my choices the best in being the new kid because for me, it was about survival. It was about finding a niche of getting accepted into a group that I felt like was a group like me and doing whatever it took to be accepted in that group. And so I specifically remember switching from the Catholic high school to the public high school my sophomore year. And I mean, thankfully I was always involved in something, but that was also a motivator for me, like to always stay involved in something was because it brought community.
Mm-hmm.
It was an easy way to find community when you have something you're involved in. And so I played sports, and so I had volleyball as that community, but the girl who befriended me in volleyball was kind of a rebel. And so I did what she did so that she would be my friend, And so that was the first time I chose to smoke. And I knew that mom and dad would be very upset by that choice,
Cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just
clarifying.
Yeah.
Well, the other weed is just so popular now. So smoking cigarettes.
Smoke cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
And she did that, and so I did that.
And crazy sophomore.
Yeah.
Yum.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was also when I started dabbling in drinking as well, alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Getting invited to a party, and and we have the parents who stay up until you come home at your curfew to like look you in the eye and talk to you. And we didn't grow up with a mom who like went to bed and we could just come wake her up, be like, I'm home, and hop in bed. We grew up with a mom who sat on the couch waiting for you to walk in that door so she could look you in the eye and smell your breath and make sure you're making the right choices.
Mind you, there was no tracking either, right?
Right.
So
yes. No.
I don't know if you're going to share this at all, but my mom loves to say she lived in Katie's back pocket.
Yeah. And I'm naive to all that means.
Yeah. Well, so what I've heard from mom, I'll just share this then, is that you would say you're going somewhere and she would follow you and make sure you actually said you were going. Or she would call the house, and if you weren't there, she would say, well, where did they go? And she would go and find you.
Oh, that's nice.
And she said there was one time that she showed up and she caught you smoking, but she just was like, I lived in Katie's back pocket.
Yeah.
I followed her and made sure she would tell me where she actually said she was going.
Yeah, and that's because I burned my own bridges. So
Yeah.
mom and dad weren't like naturally distrustful of us.
No.
I caused that.
Yeah.
And really it started before my sophomore year because I got in a lot of trouble even prior to that freshman year. Actually, that was the first time I drank. Yeah, it was freshman year. Anyway, so my wild choices started when high school started.
Mm-hmm.
There is within me a deep desire to be liked and accepted.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's true for everybody. I think some of us maybe care about that more than others in a particular way of like, it's not enough for me to have, my 1 or 2 good friends and be liked by them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I want everyone to know me. And I want everyone to have a favorable opinion of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a teen, that opinion that favorable opinion looked different in different crowds. I was going to get the favorable opinion based on what you were doing that you thought made me cool, which is what made me a bit of a chameleon. So high school was really where I started dabbling in those things. And so then I was covering up for myself by lying or, trying to hide those things that I was doing. Or mom would ask me, why do you smell like smoke? Oh, because my friends, X, Y, and Z, they were smoking. And so it just got on my clothes and whatever. And these lies, could be seen through, and that is why mom had to start following me.
Yeah.
But these choices just progressed as high school progressed, and then we switched high schools again, and it was just more of those choices of wanting to be cool, wanting to be popular, doing whatever it took to be that. And so it was still engaging in those things, but and it would go beyond that. I'd go to a party and a group of kids would be like, hey, let's do, this or that, a risky behavior. I did so many stupid things. Whatever it was that was suggested, that was like, this would be so fun if we just go and jump over people's fences, jump in their pool, get out and run away, And so that's what we did. We did stupid stuff like that. That seems basically harmless, but that ticks people off. If you're coming in their backyard, jumping off their diving board in their pool when they're in their living room watching TV, screaming, and then running away. Okay, that's mostly harmless. Yes, but it progressed from there. I mean, then one night I had a friend who was like, "Let's go steal some alcohol from open garages," and I was like, "Okay," and. Yep. And so we drove around in the car looking for whose garage was open. And not even all of us would get out of the car, but I was risky enough and also wanted to show everyone how brave I was that I'd be like, no, I'll do it. And I would sneak up into that garage and grab a case of beer and run out. I mean, that stuff could not fly now with Ring doorbells and all that stuff. But we were right.
Back then.
Yeah. And so, those are some of the things I did. And there's some good memories in high school, but there's also a lot of things I'm not proud of. And I made a lot of choices that were based on what other people thought of me. And I also think back to that time of life, and there are things I totally cringe over in terms of just people I stepped over in order to boost myself up, right? And that includes our family. I have this vivid memory. It was Dad's birthday, and it was my senior year of high school, and his birthday was on the same night as a varsity football game. And I didn't miss a social event. That was how it was in my mind. Like, I could not miss a social event. And if it was a varsity home football game, I had to be there. And so mom was like, no, you're going to be home for your dad's birthday. And so I sat through dinner pouting and having an attitude the whole time. And then I barely sang happy birthday, because I was so irritated that I had to be there for dad's birthday. And I was so miserable in my mood that mom ended up letting me go. Probably because I was ruining Dad's birthday.
Get out of the house.
And yes. And so I won. In my mind, I won, right? So I was elated to be freed and go to that football game. What do I remember about that football game? Absolutely nothing. But what I do remember is how pathetic I was to choose myself over my dad.
Yeah.
And that's not something he forgets or my mom. Right. And every kid at that high school, I don't even remember, like, come on, anyway, but that's where I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess my first question about your younger childhood, do you have any dramatic faith moments or experiences? Like how you said that you always had the faith in the Eucharist and all that kind of stuff, but you didn't get the warm and fuzzy during your confirmation, but were there any very intimate, prayerful experiences that you had? Or
Yeah. So when I think of my childhood, I kind of wrap that into up until, I don't know, 8th grade.
Yeah.
And
the innocent years.
Yeah, for sure. The innocent
years. Kind of what
years.
I would think too.
And I did not have any sort of big significant moment that I can recall, that really this is the day my faith was cemented.
Mm-hmm.
It just was always there.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of those tender years, like a day that stands out as a treasure in my heart for sure is First Communion.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember it was raining. I was so excited to wear that white dress. I remember the songs.
That's
Like-
beautiful because I honestly barely remember mine.
I barely remember mine. I remember I had stupid bangs and my veil was a headband and I didn't like it because everyone else had the cute little halo
And
ones with their buns on top of their head.
I
That's
re-
what I remember about my first communion.
That's so funny.
I don't even remember my hair.
I remember having to hand a
That
loaf
makes
of
sense.
bread. We had to hand a loaf of bread to a family.
Oh, yeah. I remember that about yours.
Uh-huh. And then I remember my friend turning back after we received for the first time and going,
Oh,
And
that's so sad.
I know. And I was, that's what I remember about mine. So that's super good.
Oh,
gosh.
Yeah. And you know what's
It's
so I
amazing.
hear you,
Yeah.
Jordan, saying like you were looking at the other girls and comparing hair. Rachel remembers her friend making a puking
Blah.
face. I don't even remember my friends. Like that day for me felt like a wedding day of sorts. Like it was for me, it was only like me and Jesus.
That's
you know,
amazing.
that's
That's
all
cool.
Yeah,
That's a
I
gift.
don't even remember my friends, my classmates, any of that. I just remember the excitement I had for receiving the Lord for the first
Mm.
time. And so that totally stands out in my heart and in my mind as just a precious
Yeah.
memory of
What?
like in my faith. And I don't know. And that's really the crowning point, I think, in my childhood years of
Oh, and that's just
faith.
beautiful. And I think just, again, it just shows that seed of faith, hope, and charity already within you. This you were longing, you wanted to be a nun. Like you longed for Jesus ultimately. And that's just beautiful that you remember it so vividly. Like that's crazy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then there's the other side of me. And anyone who knows me in life knows that, like, I am strong willed and opinionated. And, you know, I get fired up about things. I care a lot about righteousness and virtue, doing the right thing. I care a lot about these things, following the rules, whatever. And so that also. But yet I also shared there's the part of me that cares a lot about popularity. And so I feel like all of that stuff kind of erupted starting in high school, this choice of like being popular in the world versus following the Lord in obedience.
Mhm.
They were like in conflict in my mind.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess that kind of answers one of my questions. I was going to
Yeah.
say, like, during those years of rebellion, could you hear your conscience telling you this is wrong, or was it like almost kind of shut off in a sense?
No, it was totally a slow boil.
Mm-hmm.
It was a slow boil for sure. I remember freshman year was like the first time multiple things happened, like drinking alcohol, and it was actually through where I worked, which was McDonald's.
Oh my God.
But I remember I remember that it was that little angel devil
like tug of war.
yes argument. You shouldn't be doing this. Oh, it's no big deal. It's just one drink. They'll think you're cool. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll have the drink, you know? And then that's like how it was with all these things,
Mhm.
you know, the first cigarette, like, oh, I don't know, this is so bad. What if I get hooked on the first one? I mean, they're addictive, you know, and I'm like, oh, it's just one. Can I really get hooked on the first one? You know, oh, come on, it's no big deal. And then there, you did your first one. So then it's easier to do the second drink, the second cigarette, the second, like, I even remember the first time I used my middle finger. Oh my gosh, it's so silly. But like, that was for me a conflict in my mind. And then I did it, you know?
Like,
Now I was,
whoa.
yeah, I joined the cool kids.
Wait, can you
You know?
share about when you did flip someone off and then you saw him at the
Yes. Yeah. So there was this really cool phase of life where our older sister, Natalie, had her driver's license and I didn't, but her freedom was our mutual freedom. And so if mom needed something at the grocery store, we both were like, yeah, we'll go. So mom sent us to Target to go get diapers. And we were like, yeah, we'll go. So we went together. She's driving the minivan and I'm riding shotgun. And we get to Target and like in the parking lot, we were like fighting over a parking space with another car of teenagers. And then we got the parking spot. And then the girls in the other car had to park in the next lane over, but they were like, I don't know, facing us like one spot over. So I looked at the girl and she gave me a dirty look. So I flipped her the finger and I was like, yeah, I got you good. And so we go in the store, buy the diapers. And I remember being in Target, like avoiding those girls. But then we made eye contact. So I made sure to give a real good vicious glare. And then we leave. And mind you, we were starting as new students at a new school, I don't know, a week later. And so we go as new girls at the new high school. And who was there? Oh, girl that I flipped off. And she had a posse at school. And yeah, and I knew nobody.
Oh, girl.
Oh, yeah.
I need your friend.
Oh, yeah. So that backfired.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up getting called into the dean's office the first week of school. Over like fighting. And I was like, you don't understand. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know she had so much power. I know. That was a stupid choice. Anyway,
I knew how cool she was. I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. So that didn't turn out so well for me. I was extremely humiliated and I made sure to avoid that girl from there on out. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That is too funny.
Yeah.
Well, then kind of moving forward. So high school, you went to 3 different high schools and every time it was just a trying to fit in. Our older sister is only 13 months older than Katie. And so they went through this together.
Mm-hmm.
And Katie's the extroverted one and Natalie was not. And so they have similar yet very different experiences.
Yes.
Same, going through the high schools and stuff, but they both really, really struggled during this time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, teens struggle when they're in the same school system.
They have familiarity.
Yeah, like I struggled and I was with these kids from kindergarten all the way through. So to have to constantly change and adapt, you would grasp at anything you can, but you even did it not just in partying and drinking and smoking and whatever. You even did it in your athletics.
Yeah. I always wanted to be the alpha. I always wanted to stand out. I wanted to be the best in all things. I wanted to jump higher than every girl on the volleyball team. I wanted to be faster than every girl on the volleyball team. I wanted to, whatever it was. I couldn't be taller. That's not something I could control. So I was going to do everything I could control to be and be better at it. But I took all of that. I mean, that's where I was at when I went off to college.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that was my identity, truly, was in being an athlete.
Yeah.
My identity was in, for sure, being an athlete. And you were so little at the time I went off to college. You were in kindergarten.
Yep.
And it meant a lot to me to be present to you and our siblings. I didn't want to miss out on your growing up. And so when the time came for college, I knew I totally wanted to go to college, but I wanted it to be close to home so that I could drive home and be there for a birthday or just even a weekend visit or going to the apple orchard, whatever. And so I did choose to go to college, not that far away. But in going off to college, that was truly the first experience of true freedom of choice, right? Because living under our roof with our parents, like I already mentioned, mom would wait up, when it was curfew time and you got home. Now it was no one was watching me. There were no rules. The rules were my rules. The rules were whatever I chose, right? And so that was exciting for me, but that was also really revealing as well, because you think you possess the ability to have self-control or discipline or whatever. And what I found out was I had none. My discipline lied in going to the gym and working out. And that was really the only area of my life where I had true discipline. After that, I was like a wild Mustang. I went off to college and now I had no community that knew me.
Mm-hmm.
I was creating a whole new community. Like I need
Like a new image
Right.
of you.
Right. Well, and my identity was wrapped up in being an athlete. And so that was what I was still picturing. People on campus are going to know me. They're going to know I'm an athlete. But when you show up and you're not going with a group of friends, like now I'm a nobody. How do you become a somebody right out of the gates? And how do you find your people? And so I just launched into college partying hardcore,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. Right out of the gates, literally. The weekend we moved in, classes hadn't even started. But some girls on my floor had heard of a party that was being held off campus by a junior from the school. And so we were like, yeah, let's go. Yeah. Juniors? Oh, yeah. So a girl on my floor and I went to this party. Literally the weekend I moved into college. And, we drank at that party. And I actually don't remember much of that night. What I do remember is this. My friend and I went to the party. We had brought our own drinks with us. And then we left together because we knew we were being smart. We were like, okay, we're only going to drink the alcohol that we bring. Like we had heard stories and things. We were going to be safe. So we brought a 4-pack or 6-pack. I don't remember. We drank our drinks and then she was like, I'm tired. Let's leave. She thought it was lame. So I was like, okay, we'll go. So we walked back to our dorm. We get all the way back and I realized I forgot my purse. And I'm like, darn it, I need to go back for my purse. She's like, I'm too tired. So I was like, okay, I'll go back. So I went back all by myself. That, lame friend. Not really a friend. Anyway, so I go back all by myself and I had been flirting with the boy when I was at that party. And so he saw that I came back and he came back he was like, oh, you're back, and started flirting with me. And he was like, let me get you, and he said to me, let me get you a drink. And I was like, okay. So he got me a drink and that's where my memory really goes fuzzy. I don't remember much of the rest of the night. I have like little snapshots of memory from that evening. And anyway, that night I was raped in college. And I woke up in my own bed the next day and I was not really aware when I had woken up of what all had happened, but I woke up to my phone ringing. And so I got out of my dorm bed and answered my cell phone. And it was this boy who I'd been flirting with. And he said to me that I needed to go get things taken care of. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, you need to go get things taken care of. And I was like, what does that mean? And he said, you need to go get a morning after pill. And I was like, wait, what? And then I said to him, what are you saying to me? Did we have sex last night? And he said, yeah. And I was like, what? And I hung up. And I was then in a complete and utter daze. I was in a state of disbelief. I was like, wait, what? I was like now trying to go through my mind of what happened the night before. And I got up, I got like ready, for the day, like showered. And this whole time I'm like in this combination of shock, disbelief, crying, confused, like trying to take in what was happening, what was reality, what was not reality. And I couldn't really piece together the night before. I have like these like flash memories. And I was in such a state of shock. I listened to this kid. I met with him on campus and we walked over to a Planned Parenthood and got the morning after pill. And I sat in the room with one of the girls, one of the counselors, one of the ladies who worked there. And her job was to tell me like how the morning after pill works in terms of this is how you take it. This is what you're going to experience after, like symptoms you might experience. And then watch me drink it, take the pill or whatever, and then leave. And the guy's job was to ensure that I had things taken care of, right? And he paid for it. And I remember sitting in the room with that lady, and I was trying to tell her, I said to her, I think I was raped. And this is the first person I said this to. This is the first time I said these words out loud. I think I was raped. And so I was looking for a rescue. I was looking for someone like her to respond and be like, okay, wow. And then a protocol, like then there, like when someone says that, shouldn't have there been like steps that you take or whatever. Nope, she didn't care. And I also then was asking her questions because I had no idea how the morning after pill worked about like, well, if there was conception, would it kill the baby? Because I'm pro-life. Like, I don't understand. How does that work? And she was like, no, if there's a baby, it won't do anything. It won't hurt the baby or whatever. And that's what she told me and whatever. And so I just took it and left anyway. And actually I was scheduled to work that day at my job at JCPenney. So I had a friend in college who had a car who drove me. Well, I had a car, but I felt so sick after taking that. I felt miserable that I asked him to drive me home. And so he did. I get home and I got ready for work and I went to JCPenney, and that day is such that's one of those memories that, doesn't leave you. Every aspect of that day. Like my job, folding the clothes and, like
processing
just
all of that.
everything. Yeah. So I go home from work. I have told no one about this, right? Except that one lady at Planned Parenthood who did nothing. And I go home and Mom had gotten me flowers. Mom never gets me flowers.
I've never gotten flowers from Mom.
Right. And I get home and there are flowers and Mom says, I got these for you. And I was like totally shocked. And I was like, why'd you get me flowers, Mom? And she said, I just felt like you needed them. And I was a mess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I knew I needed to share this burden with someone. I needed to process this with someone. I wasn't sure. Yeah. I wasn't, there was so much going on. So I called Natalie. I talked to Natalie about all this. I shared it all with her and she cried with me and she was there for me in a really big way. And she encouraged me to go to the hospital and get a rape kit done or whatever. And I kept saying, no, 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 no. And then finally I relented. And it was literally like the end of the day, like 8 p.m. or whatever, when I finally said yes. And we weren't telling Mom and Dad, what was going on. And so we said we were going out to dinner together or whatever. And so Mom and Dad were like, oh, because Natalie and I didn't really get along at this time in life. And they were like, oh, they're getting along. They're going to go to dinner together,
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we were going to the hospital. And so I did all that. And that took a long time, actually. That whole process was really involved and lengthy. It took to the point that Mom and Dad were like, what are you guys doing? Right? Like, it's like 11 p.m. now. You're not still at dinner, And so when we finally got back in the car, Natalie and I talked about it and we were like, yeah, I don't think we can just keep like building lies to cover this. So we just need to tell Mom and Dad. So when we got back, I told Mom and Dad. And that was such an emotional moment. It's interesting. It's both, but yet it's also beautiful. Sometimes I think of the movie, what's that kids movie with all the emotions?
Oh, Inside Out or whatever?
Yes, yeah. Inside Out. And the emotions like hate on sadness because she's so depressed all the time or whatever. But in the end, it shows like, you see at the end, the beauty of sadness. What does sadness do? It brings compassion. It brings love through hugs or consolation or comfort or whatever, right? And even though that was like a really tragic, difficult, painful, anguish-filled moment, there's also great beauty in that moment or the outpouring of love that came into my life through the family.
Yeah.
But anyway, the reason I share this is because it's a very critical piece of my lived college experience.
Yeah.
This event happened before I even took my first class on that campus, right?
Yeah.
And so that colored my psyche, my frame of mind, my mental health for the next couple of years.
Yeah. So how did you cope with the trauma then of being raped?
Yeah. So I actually thought I had it all in the bag, I'm tough. That's what I told myself. I'm tough. But, I had multiple people like who asked me or encouraged me about getting counseling, mom and Natalie,
And just a
asking.
quick side note for people. I mean, rape is always terrible and traumatic. But up until this point, you had been saving yourself for marriage.
Yes, that is a good
And
point to make.
So
Yes.
just for people to understand, even through your high school time of partying and drinking, that was something you held close to your heart.
Yes.
And so obviously,
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that if you didn't save yourself, it wouldn't be less traumatic, but that was just like another layer to something that you were saving
Yes.
being taken from you.
Yes.
And
I think that's actually a good point, because that is something that bothered me deeply. Is that like in high school, I had one boyfriend in particular who meant a lot to me, and that I dated my senior year. That was the most intense feelings I had for a boy in my life up to that point, was that boyfriend my senior year. And he hands down wanted to go down that road, right? And I always told him no. For as much as I liked him, I always told him, nope, I'm saving that for marriage, right? And ultimately, that was the deal breaker for him. He broke up with me over that because I didn't ever relent or whatever. And then, anyway, so to have the experience of the sexual assault, what bothered me the most in it is I feel like what I was holding on to was robbed from me. And now I was tarnished. And so that was really difficult for me to just, work my way through emotionally. So I had people telling me to go get counseling, and I was like, I don't need counseling. I don't need counseling. I don't need counseling, And so I was just going to process it and handle it on my own. But there were other layers of things that went into this all at the same time. This is all just I was so fresh and raw as a freshman in college, having such intense experiences. Like in that first week of school, the hospital, then like when I went to the hospital, they did a battery of tests, of things, testing for STDs and AIDS and whatever. They do all that. Well, anyway, I got a phone call that I did have a positive test result. But then they followed up by saying, but don't worry, we proactively gave you the treatment against all, the STDs that could have showed up, right? And so that's already been treated or whatever. But that was like another just like dagger. Like not only was something stolen from me, now I'm like dirty goods, And so that was another layer of what I was now processing and struggling through. And so the way I coped with it actually was with heavy drinking. And if you asked me at the time, like I wasn't burying my stuff and drinking. I was just having fun. Right? But that's what I was doing. I was stuffing my feelings through alcohol.
Yeah, a binge drinker.
Yep. I was a binge drinker, not a daily drinker. I cared a lot about my academics. I was in the honors program at my university, and so I cared a lot about achieving well in my grades. And so during the week was focused time to, do all the things that mattered to me. Working out, going to class, working on, my homework, papers, whatever. But when Friday hit, Saturday, those nights I was out partying hard until I drank to the point I was blacked out. And with blackout drinking comes a lot of other poor choices, poor choices when it comes to men and things like that. And so I would find myself waking up after a night of partying and binge drinking, obviously feeling like total crap, but living in a world of self-disgust and remorse and hating on myself. This was totally a cycle in my life. I would wake up that next day after a night out and I would just be like, what is wrong with you? You're so pathetic. Why did you do that? There were so many hateful things I spoke to myself regarding the choices I had made, that this is where what you mentioned, I would literally go running to confession. Like this was like a weekly thing, because despite all of this chaos going on in my world, I still valued my faith. I did not miss Mass on Sunday, ever. Whether I was worthy to receive communion or not, I did not miss Mass. I was always there.
Mm-hmm.
But what I held like a lot of fear over is dying unprepared.
Uh-huh. That's where the fear of hell came in.
For sure. I legit had a fear of hell, and that is what kept me running to confession.
Yeah.
And so...
Would you say at that time your fear of hell was greater?
Oh,
than
for sure.
Anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. My fear of hell was, yes, definitely greater. I mean, I loved God, but my fear was what drove me to confession, not my love of God.
Yeah.
I needed to fall in love with Jesus more, But anyway, so I would look up confession times in the area, and if I had missed all of them, I would legit run across campus because I went to a Catholic university. I would go knock on the door where the priest lived, ring their doorbell, and they would be like, "Yes," and I'd be like, "I need confession now." And God bless those priests who would hear my confession at whatever time I had showed up asking for confession. And I didn't go to confession intending to do that again the next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I truly would walk away from that confession. I would say, that's it. I am not doing that again.
Mm-hmm.
And I would absolutely fall back into that same pattern. And really everything kind of came to a head my sophomore year. I hit an ultimate low point. I was failing one class. I was doing very poorly in a couple others. I got kicked out of the honors program at my university, and I was depressed. I felt like I had no real solid friend group. Even though I was playing on the club volleyball team, I was in the Irish club. I was getting involved in things, but I was at rock bottom. I was talking a lot about switching schools, and in the end, I decided not to switch schools. I decided to switch majors, try something different, and join a sorority, because that was going to help me make good choices. And that's what I did. And I was in a real low point, and I felt such unhappiness on the inside. I felt really broken, and I was still stuck in that same binge drinking pattern. And I also had personal sins going on at the time as well. I had addictions in my life that stereotypically are sins that pertain to men, but they were very real in my life. And so I just had a lot of self-disgust. And I would go sometimes to this church in downtown Chicago in the Loop, because they had confession every day of the week. And I loved that about that place, because I could get confession whenever I needed it. And so I would go down there sometimes for confession and to have some time in prayer. And they had a religious bookstore, gift shop. And this one day I went down there for confession, and then I went down to their religious bookstore and I bought myself a bracelet. And it said self-control, in beads, that my daughters make, It said, and it legit said self-control. And the day I bought that was the day in my mind I had decided I was going to enter a war with myself on overcoming these sins that happened in secret.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I had gone to confession for these particular sins so many times. And they're not sins women talk about. They're not sins that people talk about, whatever. And I had gone to a confession with these things over and over and over again. I'd fall back into that sin, fall back into that sin, fall back into that sin. But this time I was determined it was over. It was done. And I was buying that bracelet as a visible symbol to myself that we are done with that. And in conjunction with buying that bracelet was the first time in my battle against that sin that I finally said to the Lord, I don't have it. I don't have it within me. I cannot overcome this sin on my own. I need you. I need you, Lord, to break the chains that this holds over me. And I literally said that to the Lord in my heart. It was the first time I had invited him in to the battle against that sin, right? And so I invited Jesus in and I just told him you have to do it because I can't.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, that bracelet ended up breaking. That made me really upset. So I went back and bought another one. I actually still have both of them.
No way.
Yes.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Going to be relics someday.
Maybe. I don't know. It's just a reminder for me of the journey I've been on. But anyway, the reason I bring that up, inviting the Lord into that, is because that is exactly what I was missing and exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
Because when I invited the Lord into helping me overcome the addiction in my life, he actually delivered.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a zap, fuzzy, warm feeling on that day, right? There was nothing I felt. I didn't wake up and feel different. There was nothing that actually really changed in my life. What changed was a freedom. A week went by and I hadn't fallen into that sin. I was like, oh, go me. Okay. Then it was 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months. When I had hit months and I stopped and reflected on that, I thought, oh my gosh, God did it.
Mm-hmm.
He healed me. Not only did he help me, he literally uprooted from my heart the attraction or that urge,
Mm-hmm.
right, to go back to that sin. I realized that that draw
Mm-hmm.
to go back to that sin, it was gone. It
Mhm.
literally didn't exist. And so that was it. It was game over. That sin has been out of my life since that time.
Wow. That's amazing.
Those sins, yes. And so that was the start of a new chapter of my life,
Mm-hmm.
my sophomore year of college.
And so I guess 2 questions I have for you, mainly because I know your story. So if this is going to come up later, we can scrap this. But what year did you study abroad?
That wasn't until my junior year.
Okay.
The
So
next
that's
year.
coming up.
Mhm.
But just for clarification for me then, you had obviously that amazing healing. God is so good.
Mhm.
And then you were still binge drinking though,
Mhm.
correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yep. So that was the first mortal sin of my life. That was healed and uprooted, right? But there were still many more.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really wanted to study abroad in college. And I always planned on that being France because I had studied French. But for whatever reason, I woke up one morning and decided, no, I'm going to study abroad in Italy. And that's what I did. I went and studied abroad in Italy. And so I went off to Italy my junior year of college. And really, there were no academic benefits. It actually sent me back. Going abroad for a semester sent me back from, my graduation timeline. It pushed it back. But I really wanted to have that experience. So I was still in my pattern, like you said, of binge drinking and the poor choices that come with binge drinking because you don't remember or you lose your inhibitions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I was doing that same thing in Italy. And I had the opportunity to go to a ordination. Never in my life had I been to an ordination. And the ordination was taking place at St. Peter's Basilica. And it was for men from the United States of America who were getting ordained deacons. And I thought, I have to go. I'm like, this is incredible. Who gets the opportunity to do this? Go to an ordination at St. Peter's Basilica? I am not missing. So there was a small group of us students who went to the ordination, and the basilica was packed with people, tons of people. There were a lot of men getting ordained deacons. And I just thought it was so neat. So we're sitting there, and so part of the ordination, for those who have never been, is the bishop lays his hands on the head of the young man who's getting ordained. And so the men are in a line going up there for the bishop to lay his hands on their head. And when the first guy goes up to have the bishop lay his hands, I start feeling sick. And it came over me really fast. I didn't wake up feeling sick. But here we were at the ordination, and now I feel like I'm going to vomit. And now I'm sweating profusely, and I feel hot. And, and I feel like I'm sweating out of every pore. My vision feels blurry. We actually were standing up at that time, and I had to sit down. So I sat down, and I'm just like, what is going on? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to vomit, And so then I'm like, I got to find a bathroom. So I get up to go out of my row to find a bathroom. I don't know St. Peter's Basilica that well at this time. There's no bathroom in the church. You have to leave the basilica, go outside, out of the security. It is not close. I wasn't going to find a bathroom. I didn't know that, but I couldn't make it that far. I made it out of my row, and I had to brace myself against a pillar. I thought I was going to fall down. I was like, wow, there's no way I can make it to a bathroom. So I was like, what am I going to do? Lay here and lean against this pillar this whole time? I look like a crazy person. So I went back to my chair and just sat there. And then I just started praying, Lord, you better take this away. I got to make it through this mass. How am I even going to get home? So that's now what I'm praying. Take this away. Take this away. Take this away. What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
And then I look up and I see the bishop lift his hands off the last guy being ordained. And when he lifts his hands off the last guy, poof, I felt better. And then I was like,
so weird. So crazy.
And then I was like, oh, this was something else. This was from God. It started when the first guy got the hands laid on his head, and it ended instantly the moment the hands were off the last guy. Mm. And I had no idea what it was about, but I knew it was the Holy Spirit that was acting upon me in that time. And so I left the ordination just really wondering what that was about. What was that about?
Why were you doing this?
Right. And I remember calling Mom and telling her all about it. Meanwhile, I should ask Mom this now. She's probably like, oh, I have been praying for you. And Mom probably.
Mom told me she knew immediately when you told her what it was for.
Okay. See, well, that was probably a grace of her prayers and fasting.
Yeah. She told me, she was like, Katie called me, and I just knew. I knew what had happened, and I was so grateful.
Well, and I still had no clue what it was about. And even now, when I look back at that, which was 20 years ago, right, in my life, I still don't know exactly what that was about. But I know that really was the turning point in my life. What I was lacking up to that point in my life was moral courage. I did not have moral courage to actually stand up for what I knew what was right in my heart, right? I also lacked fortitude, and to overcome temptation, and that was the catalyst of me for the first time in my life being able to say no, or to have temperance, to stop at 2 drinks. Because if I had 1 drink in college, I had 7. There was no shut off. I would say to myself, this is going to be my last drink. And then that was never existed. I was drinking till blackout. Mm. And so after that was when it was like a slow effect of me being able to have temperance and change my ways and have 2 drinks and stop and move away from all the things I despised so much in my behaviors and in myself, and probably just heal some of those other wounds that I didn't realize I was still wrestling with, because that was my junior year. And then
you hadn't left any room for silence. You just were stifled, shut down.
Yes.
Bury super deep.
Yes. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then going into my senior year, I was doing incredibly well with the binge drinking was largely out of my life. I had a couple, missteps here and there, but that wasn't no longer my MO. That wasn't what was happening for me on a weekly basis. And I had actually started dating Steve during my senior year. But of course, with my crazy personality, that was when I started down this path of bulimia, wanting to be skinnier, and not even consciously like choosing it at the time. But after eating way too much in a meal, because I love food, I just love flavors and food in general. So this one time after eating way too much, feeling disappointed in myself and feeling like miserable, like on Thanksgiving, but it wasn't Thanksgiving. I was like, oh, if I just barf up some of this, I will feel like better. It won't hurt so bad, So I went to the bathroom and I did that. It was going to be a one-off temporary relief situation, right? For that one time I gorged, And then, but once, like this is like everything in my life, once you do it once, it's easy to do it a second time. So then the next time I ate too much, I did that again. And then all of a sudden I found myself in the position of every meal was now too much. Every meal was too much. So I would eat a meal and afterwards I would go throw it up. And anyway, I was only 2 months in to this path of bulimia, maybe 2 months in. And I went home for a weekend. So I'm sleeping in my old room, in my old bed. And I was hiding this from everyone. I was dating Steve at the time. And I wasn't like, obviously hiding this from everyone. But one time he came to the bathroom door and was like, "Are you okay?" Because he heard, right? And then I was just like, yeah, so just something wasn't sitting right with me, but I felt like I'd been caught, so I just covered it up with a lie. And then I realized I needed to be more careful or whatever in hiding it. So anyway, this one weekend I go home and visit the family, and it's literally in the middle of the night. I wake up to Mom blessing me with holy water.
I love Mom so much.
I know.
She's going to be a saint.
So funny.
Yes, she's like part of your story so much.
She is.
I love this woman.
I know. And she's not just blessing me anywhere. She's blessing my hands, in the palm of my hands. And she's blessing me right on my throat. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And she looks at me and says, "I don't know what I'm doing, but I was told to come in here and bless you." And I was like, yeah, well, this is ridiculous. And you woke me up and whatever. And she was like, "Okay, well, I'm leaving now." And so then she left because she had blessed me where she was told to bless me. And then I just lied there in bed because I knew exactly what it was about, right? She blessed my hands and my throat. And I lied there in bed knowing that was it. And that was it. Never again did I do that again.
No way.
Yep.
That's so
crazy. God is so cool. Oh my gosh. I know most people are listening thinking, this lady is crazy or she's making up a lot of stories. No, I'm crazy.
Very crazy.
No, but it's just, well, this is why your story is so beautiful to share.
Like so many realities that people do struggle with and go through, but like,
all in one person.
I know.
No, but and that's what's amazing. And thank you for coming on to share it, because so many people go through something in any of these little things, or not little things, sorry.
One of
these things that you've shared, and they just question God constantly, like, why me? Why God? Why this? And like turn away. And this is where it's just beautiful that you did always desire Him and to come back and to choose Him. And I mean, He allowed you to go through these things so that you can come on a podcast like this or go speak at retreats and share your story. Mm-hmm. It's relatable in not just one way to some people. It's relatable, I would say, to everyone in some type of way. Yeah. It's beautiful, and it's amazing that you're willing to share, because also so many people are not willing to be vulnerable and to share. Yeah, well, the Lord has worked on me with that over the years. I used to wonder, like, what is wrong with me? Why have I done so many horrible things? Or why have so many sins manifested in my life in this way? But then there was a period of time where I did youth ministry. And so then I was sharing a lot of these testimonies on different, moments with the teens, talking about struggles and sins and whatever. And then I would be like, you know what? I'm just going to share with you guys right now. Like,
I actually struggled with this thing myself, and those were like little stepping stones of, I was just trying to like help the teens realize that there is mercy, healing, forgiveness, like whatever you're struggling in, right? Everyone's struggling in something, right? And especially in those like teen and young adult years, it's so hard, so intense.
Yeah.
As you're trying to figure out who you are, where do I belong? Like who loves me, who accepts me, like
you said, these aren't the sins that people just talk about, like openly or
yeah,
like that's not the thing you want to go
dark
to people
secrets
with. Yeah,
that like
for
they
sure.
hide.
Yeah,
right. And so
people don't even want to go to confession about, because that's embarrassing.
Right. And it was embarrassing for me to take it to confession.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I also knew what matters more. Okay, when it comes down to it, and you're in that confessional, what matters more? Me saving face and not speaking that sin, or me speaking that sin so I can meet Jesus and say, "Yeah, I spoke the sin. Okay, I know you forgive me." Right? Like I don't want to like carry that to that encounter.
Yeah.
No, I would rather free myself. And thankfully, we also have the option of behind the screen, which is a helpful barrier when you are saying embarrassing sins.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And if you're close to a priest and you don't want to say it to that priest because you're like, he's going to know my voice, then go to the next church. He doesn't know you and he offers the same sacrament.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Anyway, so but it was through youth ministry that I started to open up and share some of these things. And then in the end, the Lord has used my testimony in a lot of ways. And what I go back to is God brings good out of all things, out of all things. I'm so grateful for those valleys, for what they've taught me about myself, about God's mercy, about God's power. God's power was manifested in a huge way in my life through that simple prayer of helping, Lord, help me overcome this sin. I have been trying to overcome this sin. I keep going to confession with this sin and it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. What is wrong with me? I couldn't overcome it on my own. And then it was just saying that prayer that one time, and then realizing, wow, the Lord did it. He freed me, right? I couldn't have done that myself. And so anyway, that's the beauty of the Lord.
Of faith.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't say this before, so I'll just share it now for people who don't know the definition of faith as a virtue. Faith is the theological virtue by which we believe in God and all that he has revealed. And it involves our intellect, will, and heart. And that is your turning point, was you grew up knowing in your mind, and your heart then came to it, and you begged him for help, and you also then had the will to do it, right? And all those things combined, and they led you out of the darkness. They led you into the light. And faith is always going to be challenged. I was reading the catechism on faith, and I think this is just really beautiful to share. Faith is always going to be put to test. You're living proof of that. Because even when you didn't always understand things maybe deeply within your heart, there was always something there bringing you back, like I've said. And so in paragraph 164 in the catechism, it says, "Now, however, we walk by faith, not by sight. We perceive God as in a mirror dimly, and only in part. Even though enlightened by him in whom it believes, faith is often lived in darkness and can be put to the test. The world we live in often seems very far from the one promised us by faith. Our experiences of evil and suffering, injustice and death seem to contradict the good news. They can shake our faith and become a temptation against it."
Read that last part again where it says temptation, suffering, our experiences of evil and suffering, injustice and death seem to contradict the good news, and they can shake our faith and become a temptation against it. That is so true, right? Like you can be in these dark places, experience dark things, or enduring suffering, or you just even witness, something that you consider that something that is an injustice where someone dies. And those things can push us away from our faith because it does feel shaken. But those are like also the most incredibly beautiful moments to turn to faith. And that is where like faith becomes real. That's where it grows, is in those hardest, most desperate, destitute moments. I mean,
you have to trust. Faith
Yes.
is just trusting in God.
Yes.
That's exactly what the definition says.
And some of the things like in my life that I already shared, like I wasn't always asking God to come into those moments or like help
you
me
didn't ask
overcome
for
those.
the binge drinking.
Well,
like that.
right.
Yeah.
I didn't, right. And even with the bulimia thing, I wasn't even at the point of asking God for help me to overcome that. Like he just acted in my life. But I do have a very real time where my faith did feel shaken.
Sorry to leave you with a cliffhanger, but you'll hear that moment that shook Katie's faith in the next episode.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to part 1 of Katie's story through her rebellious years. Stay tuned to listen to where she's at now. Thanks for listening to the Wannabe Saints podcast.
If you have a question or topic you would like us to cover, reach out to us at wannabesaintspodcast@gmail.com or on Instagram at wannabe_saints.
You can find the link in our show notes.
Thanks for listening, and God bless.